Holmes and Councillor Carlson. Councillors Van Alphen and Barkwell. Thank you. Okay, that's enough of us. All in favor? Thank you. And we'll move right on to new business. And I'll pass this over to our Director of Community Services, Lori Mullen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good afternoon, Council and staff. I'm really excited for this Council meeting to be able to share the work that has been going on for the Recreation and Health Centre project over the past several months, and to let you know what the community has been saying. I'm also looking forward to hear from Council on your thoughts on the draft needs assessment. It's been a real pleasure working with the consulting team for Cascadon, Stokes, McDonald Architects, and Lees and Associates. They are a hardworking group of professionals and fully embrace this project and the unique opportunity of an innovative, collaborative recreation and health center facility. The consultants have now completed the comprehensive community engagement process, which included a public survey with over 600 responses, online open houses, stakeholder workshops, stakeholder questionnaires, and meetings with the steering committee, Parks and Rec Advisory Committee, and the Penticton Indian Band, as well as providing content for the project website. The consultants will be presenting the highlights of the community engagement for Council this afternoon. Based on the results of the community engagement process, the consultants have begun to build program and space requirements for the new facility. They have approached the program and space options by first identifying what they've determined as the core spaces and costs, and then providing options and costs for secondary spaces for Council's consideration. The consultants will present this draft information to Council, and then we'll be asking for your feedback. I also want to express my gratitude to Alex Burland. He's a senior advisor with Leeds and Associates with a strong background in healthcare service delivery and system change in health. He has been advising us on the primary healthcare component of this project, and he's here today to discuss that aspect of the project. I'm also expecting some members of the steering committee to attend this Zoom meeting. They'll probably be jumping on the call around 1:30, and they'll be available to answer any questions that Council may have. Unfortunately, Tracy St. Clair from the Division of Family Practice is unable to attend today, but we are expecting Dr. Van Catamaran and Dr. Krabby to participate in this call as well. And soon after this Council meeting, the community engagement summary and the needs assessment summary will be posted on the project website. And the community will be encouraged to review these documents and ask for their level of support for the options being presented through an online survey. And this will be a second opportunity for the community to provide input before the documents are finalized. So with that, I would like to introduce Megan Turnock, Glenn Stokes, and Alec Burland to take you through this afternoon's presentation, and we've allocated 2 hours for this.
Well, Mayor and Council, hello, good afternoon. Well, we have a sunny Monday over here, and it looks like I see some sun streaming in behind you as well, so it looks good. Just some brief introductions, then we'll do a very high level overview of what we're about to do, and then we'll jump right in. So my name is Glenn Stokes from Cascadon Stokes McDonald. I am an architect and am one half of the sort of duo working on this project. My right-hand man is Caleb, who's on the call with us, waving. And then we have Lees and Associates, who's Megan and Alex. And Megan and Alex, Megan, you go first. Why don't you just introduce yourself?
Sure, good afternoon, councils. Nice to meet you again in person. I think last time we were on a teleconference, so it's nice to see faces. Even though we can't be there in person. Megan Turnock with Lees and Associates. I'm the principal here and Parks and Recreation planner.
Hello, I'm Alex Burland. I live near Nelson. I'm a healthcare consultant. I've worked in various countries, but I've had a lot of involvement with primary healthcare activities in BC, and currently I'm a volunteer director of a community health centre in Vancouver. I'll look forward to talking more with you shortly.
Fantastic, thank you. So what is our goals for today? Our goals primarily is to provide updates about what we've done to date, including the public engagement, and in perhaps equal measure get feedback from the council and mayor on any questions, concerns, or any more information that you will want us to work on in the follow-up or the conclusion of this project to help you with whatever choices you'll have to make in the future. So that's our general goal, kind of 50-50. And in the theme of 50-50, we have about half the time more or less dedicated to talking about the recreation and aquatic facility and all of the public engagement and needs and core program around that. And then the second half, or close to half, we're gonna dive into the primary healthcare piece, because although it's a smaller amount of space, it is an equally complex kind of question and debate. So we've set aside the second half for that piece. So so that's how we're going to do it. And then we're going to present, Megan's going to present the basically the engagement process for the first half of the first half. And then I'll present what we think, the architects think you should do with that information on the second half of the first half. And then we'll do it all again for the primary care. So I hope that makes some sense. But basically we're gonna start with Megan, and we're gonna talk about public engagement, and then we're gonna dig in deep into the primary care in the second hour. So if that's okay with everyone, I think I'm sharing my screen is the next step. If that's right, Laurie, yes? Okay, I'm gonna do that. And then we're gonna give it to Megan to start talking. So let's see if this works.
Councillor Holmes?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
I was just wondering about questions, like what, do you want to take questions as we go along, or save them to the end, or especially if we get into each specific space topic?
I personally am perfectly happy taking questions along the way. I think we're treating this as a workshop atmosphere, and happy to take questions and comments and have commentary along the way. We have lots of good stuff to go through, so let's talk about the stuff when it comes to mind. I'm good with that. So
sorry, Glenn, if I could just jump in here. Because you're sharing your screen, I can't see all of the councillors. So please indicate somehow if you would like to speak. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, thank you for that. And I think Caleb might be on watch as well, and he can put a chat. Not quite sure. We'll wing our way through this, and we'll make sure if somebody has something to say that we will I'll find out, and Lori can help us as well. Make sure we catch that. Thank you. So I'm going to stop talking and put myself on mute somehow. And Megan, please jive in.
Glenn, if you can give me control, then I can probably advance the slides.
Now you're really
myself instead of having to say next slide to you.
Do not know how to do that. Sorry.
That's okay.
Let's just go ahead. I'll advance for you.
Okay. I think we can probably skip to the project overview slide. Keep going. Yeah, so this is this timeline was presented last time we met, and just to show you how far along we've progressed. The grayed out part is what we've done, and we're here at the engagement summary and needs assessment presentation to you before going back out to the public and finalizing the report. And although we're not going into a lot of detail here, we have initiated, we had a meeting with Penticton Indian Band, which was really well received, and they're very interested in the project, especially given the location within the Penticton Indian Band territory and the commonage claim. They did see also opportunities for reconciliation and collaboration when the facility details as they progress. They did encourage the district to consider allocating some funding to undertake engagement with elders and others within the Penticton Indian Band, just recognizing the time and attention required to undertake those discussions. Next slide, please. Overall, the public online survey was a strongly preferred engagement method. We weren't really sure how this engagement would go. We were optimistic, but given the pandemic and people's different varying levels of ability to access technology, for example, we weren't quite sure. But got a really strong public online survey response with over 600 responses. The response from stakeholders was also strong. You know, we can't undervalue those 25 participants in the workshops and the 38 stakeholder questionnaires, because those folks link back to sometimes hundreds of community members. They're also a valuable window to those underrepresented populations, such as people with low income or those with mental health challenges or seniors who we might not have captured in the public online survey. Next slide, please. Overall, those who responded to the online survey were 95% from had noted their primary residence in Summerland. 76% of responses were from women, and 43% of responses were from parents with children under 18 who were living at home. Also notable, 24% of respondents were between ages 35 and 44. It was also interesting that we did ask a question about how often folks use the existing facility, and almost half of the survey respondents use the existing facility weekly in the fall, winter, and spring. Although there's a lower use in the summer, obviously given the great outdoor recreation you have there. We did try to ensure that we captured some youth voices. We had 15 responses in the survey from those under 18, and we hope that that demographic group is also partially represented by parents who answer the survey. I think underrepresented as well, over 75, there are about 22 responses. Again, we're hoping to cover that demographic off through the stakeholder questionnaire and workshops. Yeah, we did not do, just noting, we did not do a statistically valid survey, so take that with survey responses with a grain of salt. And next slide, please. So one of the main things for both components was trying to get a sense of the overall vision that the community had for this future facility. So we asked stakeholders in the public what their hopes were for this aquatics and indoor recreation facility. And from the public survey, the highest ranking answers were being inclusive and welcoming for everyone and encouraging active lifestyles. And just brought in also from the stakeholder survey and workshops the idea of this facility being multifunctional and creating a community hub. Especially given that this facility is expected to serve the community for the next 40 to 50 years. That came up very strongly, especially from stakeholders. And among all the engagement, there was this thread of having a facility that the community can take pride in, and it supports families, children, youth, and seniors, and just a really wide range of folks. One of the quotes from the survey was, a facility that meets the needs of a broad spectrum of the community will ensure that Summerland is a vibrant community rather than folks heading to other communities to meet their recreation and health needs. I think that was pretty representative of the tone of the comments. Two of the lowest ranking answers from the public survey were providing space for arts and culture. It's not surprising given the Summerland Arts and Culture Center. And then providing a regional destination also didn't score very highly in terms of the vision for the facility, which was interesting. And that'll come back in play a little bit later in the presentation. Next slide, please. Oh yeah, sorry, you're there. This is the high level overall. We'll go into a bit more detail on each of these in the next slides, but overall, the public really appreciates the current aquatics and fitness center. And those two amenities, not surprisingly, kind of topped the priorities for replacement. There were also many stakeholders who identified the need for multi-purpose rooms, and similarly, like the public emphasized the need for youth programs, family and child-oriented programs, and seniors programs, all of which can be met through multi-purpose rooms. The multi-purpose rooms also tie into the vision for a facility that can adapt to the community's needs over time. There's also a strong support for fitness program space, so that's different than a fitness center, which is more of a cardio machines, weights, and such, but having rooms for things like yoga, Zumba, and other fitness and dance programs potentially. And just also a note, we will get into the gymnasium in more detail, but there's definitely unmet demand for gymnasium space. but there's a bit of nuance in terms of how that, what that demand is and what the willingness to pay for a community dedicated gymnasium entails. Next slide, please. So in line with the community's vision, an inclusive and welcoming approach to the new pool sort of stood out to us, with leisure swimming, a hot tub ranking higher per se than leisure lane swimming or even competition space. A pool that's great for rehabilitation and accessibility was important. Something that's more spacious and universal, and family change rooms were also important to folks. One of the quotes from the survey was, having a pool is very important for the quality of life here in Summerland. So you'll see this come back in Glenn's recommendations for the facility. Stakeholders, including like Orca Swim Club, requested that the new pool be designed to allow for competitions, as currently the pool does not have enough depth at one end which has prevented the club from hosting even small sanctioned swim meets. There was also interest from the swim club in exploring the potential for an 8-lane pool, and we didn't get a clear definition on 6 or 8 lanes through the survey, so Glenn will be taking you through a bit of discussion on that component. Next slide, please. There's strong support for the fitness center and the fitness program space. Generally, it came in about ranked second after the pool in terms of importance. It links back to the overall vision of this as a health and wellness hub for the community, and ties also to rehabilitation programs that were highlighted in the survey and by stakeholders. In addition, groups like the Orca Swim Club would also like space adjacent to the pool for dryland training and classes and things like that. So these all tie together quite well. Next slide, please, Glenn. Oh, yeah. So to the gymnasium, from the public survey respondents, the gymnasium really ranked third after aquatics and fitness centers in 2 instances. But first, in terms of what facilities are lacking in Summerland, with about 51% of survey respondents saying that gymnasium space is lacking. And then secondly, in terms of what spaces are most important for indoor recreation community use. We've had the school district 67 involved in the steering committee, as well as in some of the stakeholder workshops. And they have indicated that the school gymnasium already is more or less fully utilized during the school year. And there's not a lot of opportunity for community access or expanding access. Some of the comments from the community voiced some hope that a dedicated community gymnasium could be avoided by increasing access to the school gyms or some shared model. And Glenn can take us through a bit of what the logistics of that, but really there's some barriers that arise in terms of school uses are going to continue to be prioritized. There are some logistical challenges of managing public access during the day while ensuring student safety and things like that. So given this information, we're planning to get your feedback on gymnasium space today, and also hope maybe there's an opportunity to go back to the community after this meeting before we finalize and get one more round of feedback on gymnasium space. I will say that gymnasiums are one of the most multifunctional and programmable spaces, and they contribute a lot to the programming needs that we've identified, like not just gymnasium sports. So fitness classes can go there, youth drop-in activities, children's programs, summer camps, family drop-in activities, community gatherings, and the like. Next slide, please, Glenn. In terms of multi-purpose spaces, the public highlighted, youth-oriented spaces actually topped the list in a couple of places, which was interesting. And stakeholders also noted that there were not enough spaces to host classes, programs, and meetings, even given the other existing facilities in town. And other suggestions that came up but weren't really floating to the top from the public engagement side were an indoor walking track. Just it's very challenging to incorporate that type of facility at this size and scale. And then there's also a group in the community that wants that, as you know, that wants the district to consider building an indoor tennis facility, but it really came in as a low priority in the public survey. And similarly, as this type of facility is being promoted as a regional draw, that also came pretty low on the list in terms of the overall vision for the facility from this public engagement. I just wanted to recognize that and note that. In terms of additional community services, so beyond recreation, we were trying to spread the net wide to gather up all the potential community needs. So programs for youth ranked highly again, emphasizes that there's a need for services for that age group. There were also suggestions from stakeholders, including providing access to showers and hygiene and food for those most in need. This can tie in potentially to expanded and improved change rooms. Serving new Canadians also came up. Multi-purpose rooms are a great way to meet that need. There's a lot of overlap that starts to come in through this needs assessment or the public engagement piece. And really circling back, we did ask about the community's willingness to pay, and there's just overwhelming support. Like, I don't think I've ever seen numbers this high for willingness to pay on anything. So 83% support is really great. And even the stakeholder questionnaire. There is support voiced in the workshops and open house. So just across the board, like support for this new facility. I think that wraps up the public engagement part related to the recreation, aquatics, and fitness component. And I guess I'll just pause, Madam Mayor. Maybe there's an opportunity just to open the floor for questions on the engagement piece, or we can just have Glenn launch into the next section on recommendations.
Thank you, Megan. Is there anybody that would like to ask a question of what we've heard so far? Okay, I guess not. We'll carry on.
Over to you, Glenn.
Thanks, Megan. Okay, fantastic. So from all of that feedback, the question is, okay, then what shall we build to accommodate the needs of the community, both as we determined from the general public and also from the stakeholders that we spoke to. So that was kind of my half of this project, and we're going to speak to that piece then. Let's see my slide. There we go. So, sorry. Oh my. There we go. Pardon me while I set this back up. Full screen mode. There we go. So our general strategy was to determine what we're calling the core program, which is the, well, perhaps we could call it the minimum practical project that meets the core needs of the community. And perhaps I would say the consultants are recommending that this is likely about as a subject to our conversation today, about as small as you would want to consider, and by our recommendation, in order to adequately replace the existing facility and accommodate the needs in a modern way for the next 40 or 50 years. And so graphically, it's the pink object you see on your screen, which includes the aquatic facility and some multi-purpose space and some activity spaces. And then there's a bunch of questions about what about other needs, and we have them kind of around the periphery, and I'll speak to them more specifically, but just for your interest's sake, the first one to consider is to upsizing the 6-lane lap pool to an 8-lane lap pool. So I'll talk about that. And the next one's hidden behind my group of people. Oh, okay, the primary care, which of course is a significant and interesting component that we've been discussing since the beginning of this project. Item C is a licensed daycare that would be typically operated by a third party, but run out of the recreation center. This speaks to the kind of two things, the childcare aspects of the questionnaire and sort of a child. I know you're undergoing a childcare study at this time, and so I'll speak more to that daycare or childcare piece. Then there's the gymnasium. So I'm sure you're going to want to ask me, what does it mean if we build our own gymnasium? So we're going to show you what that means. That's D. And then E, even though it ranked relatively lowly in the public survey, that doesn't mean it's not worth understanding what it means to add a tennis center. So we have the tennis center as well. So we have one core program and then 5 additional pieces, any or all of which could be added in or none of which, and look forward to kind of your feedback as we go forward. But if you'll indulge me, I'll just explain them in more detail.
I believe Councillor Burkwell has a question.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Just for before we start our comparison purposes, this sort of core aquatics and recreation area that sort of is your minimum needs, you might say. In the pink, how does that size-wise compare to our existing facility?
Great question. I'm about to bang up to that question here in a second, so let's hold on and I will answer it. I can flip forward. I'll just get there in 2 minutes. Thank you. I will not forget to answer that. Thank you for the question. Okay, so here we are. The core program is the list of spaces and sizes to accommodate the core needs. The minimum size and mix for a replacement Summerland Aquatic and Recreation Center. And just for your interest, all of the areas all the big areas, when you see a grand total for a square footage, that is including walls and corridors and mechanical. So it's everything that you have to build. And when you see big dollars, as it were, the big dollar value will be the project cost, which is all the money required to build the building and to pay for consultants to help you design it and to pay for permits and all those things. So I'm happy to go into the gory details of how that comes out, but the idea is we're giving you the full size of the building and the full cost of the project. And I'm hoping that your answer is going to come up here soon. Or maybe Caleb, do you have those answers at your fingertips, just so I don't forget it and you can pipe up when you have it? I know
in 2 seconds.
Okay, I know it's coming up, but I just don't have it right at my fingertips. So the one answer is 32,800 square feet is the gross floor area of the proposed minimum project. And Caleb's going to come back and find that other number for me shortly. But until then, I'll just tell you what it includes. It includes a leisure pool, which is as you've seen in many modern aquatic facilities. It has warmer water. It has some play features. It has therapeutic features. Don't worry about the shape that you see here. It's just an example of a leisure pool. You get the chance to design the one you like when we get there. We have a 6-lane lap pool, and we'll get into the difference between 6 and 8 shortly, but 6 is really kind of a working minimum. 50-meter 6-lane lap pool, or sorry, 25-meter 6-lane lap pool is really a working minimum when it comes to laps. It allows you to have like 2 to 4 lanes open for laps and some other lanes open for teaching or for therapeutics or for aquafit and so on. We have a hot pool to replace your existing one. It's a little bit bigger. We have change rooms, which are minimum, they're a modern requirement. And we would include men's, women's, and universal. Meets all the modern kind of ways that these would work. We've included a steam or sauna room that didn't really rank terribly highly in the questionnaire, but again, we probably have one of those, so pretty small. And then we have guard and pool staff areas and storage and mechanical. Okay, now until we wait for that area to pop out. I'm sure Lori has it. Nope. Okay, well, so someone will remind me shortly.
The existing one is 17,900 square feet.
Okay, so let's back up and let's compare. And we think, Caleb, that's gross floor area?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So this is 32,800. So if you squint, it's kind of double.
Could I ask a question? Regarding the sizes, the square footage of the fitness and the multi-purpose, are those, I couldn't find those anywhere. You have the aquatics, the pool itself is 21,000, but just wondering the comparisons of the size of the other rooms there.
Compared to what you have today, you mean?
Yeah. Okay,
good one. Okay, so let's jump forward to that question right now. We'll skip this little middle piece and we'll come back to it shortly. Which just has to do with like per capita pool size. Okay, so we're talking about multi-purpose. So what we're recommending is a multi-purpose for youth and family with a dividing partition, an activity-oriented multi-purpose room, which is, the kind of one that would have a wooden floor and appropriate for dance and martial arts and so on. and then a fitness center, which is, you know, the one with the weights and the treadmills and so on. So those are the terms, and that's the spaces we're recommending. These are meeting the public requests for fitness center and activity-oriented multipurpose, and then multipurpose spaces. What are the sizes? I'm hoping that slide is, let's just skip to that slide because I think it's coming up here. Here we go. So what we're recommending in this is called a program, and a program is a list of spaces in all their areas, and you have the aquatics piece, and the recreation piece, we have the youth and family multipurpose at 1,200 square feet, the activity multipurpose at 1,500, and a fitness center at 2,500 square feet. And you only have, I believe, a fitness center today. And Caleb, do you happen to have that number available?
I'm
calculating it right now.
Okay, and Lori might have it.
It's about
One of them is 550 square feet.
What do you think, Lori?
Sorry, what did you say, Caleb?
One of them is 550 square feet.
Yeah, the fitness center space, I believe, is 1,800 currently.
Okay. So these are really good questions, and we would be happy to come back with the full breakdown so that you could do your comparison between existing and new and be able to understand that more clearly. But in general, then the fitness center is not quite double. It's another 700 square feet, so about 50% more. 2,500 square feet in my sort of experience is I'll call it the minimum working size for a fitness center. You know, in other municipalities I'm working in, they're talking 6,000 and 8,000 square feet, and that's certainly not what I'd be recommending here. So it's bigger by about 50% is what we're suggesting. And these multipurpose rooms, I can give you some other kinds of data about how many people they would serve at a time, which might be helpful. But again, they are of the medium multipurpose category, nothing like a banquet hall, which is usually 2,500 square feet or so. So they're kind of smaller than banquet halls. And the youth and family multipurpose, you might be able to split into half into some modest sized 600 square foot units. I'm kind of locked on my program page. Why don't I just finish this off and then we'll have more questions. So we have the leisure pool is about 1,800 square feet. And I can show you some pictures of what that might look like. The lap pool is the same size basically that you have today. Basically it's 6-lane, 25-meter lap pool at 3,500 square feet. There's a hot pool at 500 square feet, which seats to up to 20 people. The pool deck is simply the area around the actual water that you need in order to store and guard and, walk around. Change rooms are dictated by the Health Act. So the size is just simply a resultant of the size of the pools that you have. We have one sauna steam room at a normal size, 150 square feet. And then we have some dedicated support spaces, storage, guard and staff and mechanical. Talked about the rec spaces briefly. The admin and support is all the good stuff you'd normally need to have, including lobbies, washrooms and change rooms that are outside of the pool possibly. Reception area administration. Drop-down offices are kinds of spaces that you might allocate to the swim club or a physiotherapist or recope. So there's some space for them. Modest spaces, 500 square feet in total. The NSF, when you see that, is net square feet. That's the total square feet of all the usable space where you can put chairs and people or, stuff like that. And so that's 23,350. A gross up is all the space needed for corridors, walls, mechanical, janitor rooms, and that kind of good stuff, which gets you to 32,800 square feet. The construction cost is at $700 per square foot, which is I think it's a reasonable rate for today's dollars. And that is the cost to get a contractor to build the building for you. And then the 30% is an allocation of soft costs. So consultant fees, legals, permits, furniture, and so on. And then that gives you a total of $30 million plus or minus, which excludes tax and land costs and assumes 2025 for construction. So I kind of jumped all the way into this meaty piece. So the summary is that we think it's a 33,000 square foot gross facility at about $30 million. And that includes all the parts of the puzzle we see here. Certainly, if we felt that there was, we needed to trim some areas down, some areas to trim would include some of the multi-purpose rooms possibly. But that being said, the aquatic center is largely what you have today, plus a leisure pool, which ranked very highly on the public engagement. I can take a break and receive some questions about this component for sure.
Could I ask a question about the pool?
Please.
It's the same as it is today, but can we make it deeper so to allow those competitions that they can't have now?
Yes, that's a good question. Thank you. So I've written in here this little term called FINA standards. That's the International Federation Internationale, something to do with French aquatics. Anyways, long story short, yes, it'll be competition ready. And that's perfectly normal for a modern pool, and that's what you would have for sure.
I have a question, if it's my turn. Yes.
I wouldn't pretend to be in charge. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, it's interesting to look at the multi-purpose rooms, two of them. And I'm wondering, what is the difference between a gymnasium and a multi-purpose room? Supposedly a gymnasium that also is dividable.
That's an excellent question, and you're already jumping far ahead into the kind of pros and cons with the gymnasium. And perhaps you're wondering, if I build a gymnasium, do I have to build these other things? So the gymnasium, well, it's got 24 feet clearance, it's got basketball nets, it's got places to set up all of your sports primarily, but certainly you can do dance, martial arts, you can have meetings and all sorts of good things, day camps in a gymnasium. Gymnasium, nothing really beats a gymnasium for multi-purpose activities. And unless you're trying to have a small gathering, maybe it feels a bit strange. But yes, if at the end of this or at some point in the future you felt the gymnasium was needed, I would agree to a recommendation to reconsider the multi-purpose rooms and either remove one or trim them down. So the activity multi-purpose room, I'll just quickly say, has 12-foot ceilings. That's kind of your typical for like doing step aerobics or TRX or something. So half the height. It has the same floor, and it tends to be smaller and has like the mirror on the wall, and the bar for doing dance classes. But other than that, they're largely similar except for the size. And the gym is like 7,000 square feet, as you'll see shortly, compared to 1,500.
Thank you.
No problem.
Other questions, Council?
Hello.
Okay, Councillor Barkville, please.
Yeah. Further to Councillor Holmes' question about the depth of the pool, I also read a comment about, if I remember, it was some other user groups. There wasn't the right depth for enough of them to do whatever it was they wanted to do. Maybe it was recope or something. So is there a conflict in the depths that some groups want and other groups require?
Great question. Making sure there's enough depth for what you want to do. So the short answer is I have a fair amount of confidence that this recommendation will meet the requirements of many groups. It's a very, very common and typical allocation of pools for modern facilities. Actually, I think a lot of the recope activities will move into the leisure pool. It'll have a warmer water and a maximum depth of about 3.5 to 4 feet. So it works great for therapeutics. When it comes to the lap, so I think that's a great question. I think we're going to be covered. So when it comes to the lap pool, then you really have three options. Do what everybody normally does, which is what we're recommending. And that's half the pool is less than 5 feet deep. And then half the pool is deep for diving. And that's every pool you go to. The one in Penticton, it's just like that. Almost every pool you go to. There's some pools that, because deep water is sometimes a little bit limiting for some participants and also expensive to heat. Very once in a while, an aquatic center will choose to do shallow water all the way across, but appropriate for competitions, which is a choice you can choose to make, but it tends to be a choice you'd make further down the line. And it's just an interesting choice to make. And the last one is a movable floor. If you have a massive pool and you want to be able to do a bunch of different things, you buy a movable floor. That particular example, I'm not really recommending. I think I said a lot of words to say that I think there's enough shallow and regular pool depth to run a wide number of programs simultaneously.
Okay, I guess Glenn, please carry on.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to back up just for interest's sake so you will know I'll talk to every slide at least once. So bear with me while I just back my slides up. Okay, I will not belabor this middle piece, but part of what we've done in other municipalities and we've done for this too is to do this. It's basically to rank your proposed aquatic center across other places in British Columbia and rank it as in swims per capita, swims per capita per year. That is to say, a kind of how many people can your pool take in a year, and how does that rank to other places? So there's some math about shallow and deep water and how many people you can accommodate in each of the two, which is all kind of explained here. And then by the time you do all the math, typically across BC, the goal is often about to have enough water to accommodate 4 to 10 visits per person per year. Now, not everybody's going to go to the pool, but lots of people go more than 10 times. So that is the general rule of thumb, and that's generally how you might do this study. And so we use this as a method to kind of just bracket this particular project across other places in British Columbia. And before I show you where you stand, I will note that pools have a natural size below which they can't really get any smaller because they don't work. So I've shown you what I think is the smallest normal pool for your municipality, which is 6 lanes, 25 meter with a leisure pool. Now, as it turns out, a community that's 2 or 3 or 4 times your size would still have the same size of pool because it's still appropriate. You just can't get any smaller. It doesn't make any sense. So your numbers are going to be, because of your relative population, this analysis will skew you to the higher side than 4 to 10. So what I've done is I've taken population in 2041 and I've used health districts. So it's not actually your exactly your population, but the health districts align nicely when you kind of butt them against one another. So today you have in your current pool about 12 swims per capita per year, which is already on the high side. And if you compare it to some other municipalities, Vanderhoof, which is a pool we just finished, which is the same size of pool that I'm recommending for this project, currently has 15, Terrace has 10, Nelson has 7, Penticton has 10, Vernon has 4, and Kelowna has 7. So, okay, there you go. So the Okanagan generally is ranging from 4 to 10, and currently you're at 12, largely because of the relative population size as it compares to your pool size. And then we might compare what the recommendation is. And you can see the 6-lane pool gets you to 20 and the 8-lane pool gets you to 23. And all this is to say, I don't think you should panic about, oh, maybe I shouldn't build anything more. I think it's to say that you should feel confident that when you replace the pool, there's plenty of water for your citizens to enjoy. And there will be an abundance of opportunities for people to come visit the aquatic center and have space. Because again, I wouldn't really recommend going any smaller. It just doesn't, you can't actually do anything anymore. And I've also done a slide on the Okanagan. Okay, so on the top slide is the current. So on the left is Summerland, current is 12, and on the right, including your pool, across the Okanagan from Vernon to Penticton is 6.7. And then even with the future pool, whether it's 6 or 8 lane, and you look at the 20 or 23, across the Okanagan, it really only moves the needle from 7.1 or, oh, there's a typo in there somewhere. That should be a higher number, sorry. Up into, just moves the needle slightly. So even though it feels like perhaps this little analysis suggests that your pool is heroically large for your community, across the Okanagan, it's a modest change to the overall water across all the municipalities. I think it just supports the fact, again, that when you're done this project, you should feel confident that there's lots of opportunities for your citizens to be able to enjoy the aquatic center. All right. What is it? There's a little graphic. Here's a little graphic. So ranging, you can see the bigger the community, often the lower the numbers. So Vancouver's down at 4 actually, just because there's just so many people and fewer aquatic centers per. So and on this, when we track Vancouver, Vernon, Kelowna, North Van, Penticton Terrace, Summerland existing is the next one, and then Vanderhoof is the top line. And then the recommendations are under the line at 20 and 23, I think, or 24 swims per capita. Okay, I know that was a lot of data. I'm going to go on. These are back to the multipurpose rooms. I think we've spoken about these already a fair bit, so I'm going to carry on. On the support spaces, so again, there's a lobby and all the normal support spaces. And in this particular case, again, we have these things called drop-down offices, which would be a very modest addition to the facility to accommodate some third-party users, such as a swim club, physiotherapist, or RECOPE, which I think makes good sense. And it only represents about 500 square feet to make that happen. What are the benefits of this proposal? Responds to the primary community needs, the ones that Megan highlighted at the top of the list, has a wide range of recreation opportunities, and it really is trying to maximize for the most number of citizens in the community. Challenges would be funding, presumably, so that's a question that we can debate for sure. And then we've talked about this program, so I'll carry on to the next page. And I will now talk about the 5 ad options, unless we want to take a quick break, pause for any questions. Looks like none. Okay. So, well, that's the baseline. And after this conversation, I'm happy to modify the baseline. Nobody's building anything yet. We got lots of time to make adjustments, but that's what I've recommended to date, or we've recommended to date. So what can we add on to that? Let's talk about the costs and the benefits and the challenges of other choices. There was strong support for leisure lap swimming and use of the lap pool. And I think a 6-lane lap pool meets those requirements. There was also support, of course, for enough lanes for competition and more lanes for more programming. So what does that mean? Well, I can add 2 more lanes. I got to add a little bit of pool deck and a little bit of change rooms to make all that work. And by the time I'm done, it actually adds up to about 2,900 square feet and a kind of 2.8 million. And that's, again, big numbers. So that's the full building size and the full project costs. But this will get you to allow you to do more competitions. So if I may, I'll just, so based on information from your community, a 6-lane pool can offer these jamboree style meets, which are small. They last about half a day. They're meant for newer swimmers, and they have several meets a year, but they have less draw than a competition. Truly, if you want to hold a competition that's at the provincial or regional level, you do need an 8-lane pool. 1 or 2 meets a year can attract 200 to 300 families, and that's the story with the competitions. Let's see what the next page says. Benefits. So of course, it's not just competitions. You have more water for, aquafit and lap swimming and so on. So if you looked at every new pool in the last 20 years in British Columbia, you would see most of them being 8-lane, 25-meter lap pools. That is the bread and butter of lap pools for sure. But not all of them. Some are 20, some are 6-lane, and some are bigger, like, well, Penticton has the 10-lane. They're ideal for competitions, and they also work for more simultaneous programming, but you should make a conscious choice if you choose to move forward that it will be more to build and more to maintain. There's nothing more expensive than pools to build, and they take maintenance, and then there's the water you have to heat, and so that is a challenge side. And I think that's, okay, so here's my math. So the actual water is 1,200 square feet, which is the same, it'll be just more of what you have already. You need some pool deck because it just got a little bit bigger to get around the pool. And the Health Act makes me add some change rooms because you have more bathers coming. So it gets me to 2,500 square feet. I'm gonna add a bit of gross up multiplier that gets me to 2,900 square feet. And because this is aquatic space, it's actually a little bit more expensive per square foot. So anyway, I get to $2.8 million by the time I do my math. And I think that's the last slide for the enhancement of the lap pool, which means I am going to pause and see if anybody wants to ask a question about that. Nobody? Okay. No? Okay. So what else? Okay, this one we're dedicating, I'm presuming there'll be lots of questions about primary healthcare. We have Alex with us to answer them. If you'll indulge me, I'm going to go very briefly through it here because we're going to pick this ball back up a little later on. But I didn't want to completely ignore it. So anyway, here is a primary healthcare. This is an example of what you could choose to do, which is fairly, well, it's not as, it could be bigger and it could be smaller. It's a medium-sized animal. It's 10,000 square feet of usable space, which is about 12,500 by the time you build the walls and the corridors. And we'll go through this more carefully later. That's the childcare. Pardon me. Back up. So it includes offices, shared offices, exam rooms, treatments rooms, sterilization rooms, and it represents a primary healthcare center that would accommodate most of the current primary healthcare physicians in Summerland and have enough space to attract new ones. And again, we'll have lots of time, and I see we have representatives from the health community here who will be able to chime in if you just let me do that in the next section. So I'm going to plow forward. Okay, you also could choose to add a licensed childcare. Now, I will say this, I understand there's a childcare study being undertaken simultaneously when we do not have the results of this yet, and it might obviously add to the suggestions here or adjust them. But presuming that there's a lack of childcare, licensed childcare space in Summerland, which would be a reasonable presumption, this is an example of one you could build, which has some toddler space and some preschool space and all the parts that go with it. This is a kind of medium/small size one, and it has space for, I think, 37, has 37 spots, if I recall correctly. I think it comes up later. The benefits would be childcare is needed in Summerland, is ease of use because it's adjacent to the facility. The challenges are we're waiting for the results of the childcare study, and you typically require an operator to actually run the space. So it requires kind of you need to make someone to make a deal with to make that work for yourselves, typically. And
I have a quick question, Glenn.
Yep.
Do you or maybe Lori know when we can expect the results of the childcare needs assessment?
Thank you. I'll let Lori answer the question.
Sure, and just to confirm, yes, 37 spots, Glenn, daycare spots there. I just looked in the report. The study, the final needs assessment will be done in March of 2021. But that said, I'm expecting a draft results of the survey by the end of this week. And so I'm anxiously awaiting that just to see what that data is telling us as far as need.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you, Lori.
Could I ask a follow-up question to that? So this maybe this will come out in the daycare study, but I'm just wondering, the visioning of having a childcare center in the rec center, is that, do we envision people dropping off their kids while they go for a swim and maybe go shopping or something, just on a kind of as need basis, or are we envisioning a daycare for working parents who come and drop them off every day, Monday to Friday, while they're at work? What kind of daycare are we conceptualizing?
Thank you. That's a great question. The first example, I think, and I could probably more clearly express it, is included in the core program. So child minding is what we're calling that piece, where you might drop them off, would be a program offering run by the staff of the rec center, if it made sense, in some of the multi-purpose spaces that are available in the core program. That would be the intent. This particular program C, licensed childcare, that's the kind where you would have a spot and you would drop either your toddler or your preschooler off while you went to work. And so you may or may not have any direct connection to the recreation center explicitly, except you might choose to go there before or afterwards, if it was convenient for you. So this is an add-on that is not, it's not core to the program, which is why it's kind of an add-on piece, but it is an opportunity if council felt it was important to embed this perhaps needed component into the project, if I may. And does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
And could I just follow up on, so 8,000 square feet, I don't know the typical size of daycare, but if that's a small to medium size, that's like 3 times the size of my house. And so I'm just wondering, how is the size determined?
There is, you know what, believe it or not, there is nothing more mathematical in this world than health departments and child care. It is down to the millimeter. So you choose how many spots you want when you get ready to build one of licensed child care. And then there is endless math that goes along with that to spits out the numbers at the end of the day. And so, yes, so this is all math. So 37 spots will result in 6,100 square feet of net square feet. And then I've just added some gross up to get the walls and corridors and so on. If you chose a 24 spot or a 12 spot childcare, it would be reduced by exactly the ratio of the number of spots you offer, basically. So why do I choose 37? It's a reasonable guess at one you might choose to do. You can certainly go smaller. In other community centers that I have done in other municipalities, this is the one people have chosen. So I kind of benchmarked it for your purposes. What I think it does show you is it's like, okay, it's kind of like a $3 to $5 million choice if you want to get one, if you want to add one in. That's what it's saying. And then subject to the study that comes out, this can be modulated if you feel that there was an important piece to consider.
And the 6,100 includes the outdoor play space that's partially covered?
No, that's excluded from that math. So it could be,
right, yes.
Yeah. So, but the cost of the outdoor play space is it's kind of, I've baked it into the numbers in the background. So all of that stuff you need would be in that $4.6 million.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barkwell.
Yeah, the provincial and federal governments are always making promises about $10 daycare and things like that. I don't follow it that closely. Can anybody tell me what the current state of the promises are with the senior level financing and such for this kind of project?
I could not, but
I can tell you daycare costs a lot more than $10 a day.
Yeah, I just wonder what the latest promises were and whether we might be able to factor any of them in.
I think, Councillor Barkwell, I think it's a 10-year program. The number 37,000, that's the kind of number that's coming to my head. I'll see if I can find out more on that.
Yeah, I think
I think that's what I heard.
By the time it comes to making a decision, I think we might want to see what's available from other levels, since they seem to be so full of promise on that.
Yes,
yeah.
Well, we've already got interest, as you know, from the Minister of State for Childcare. We've spoken to her a few times at UBCM and other times. So they are aware and there is interest. So we'll see if there's money too. That's the most important piece for us.
Yeah, what is it?
Thank you. And anecdotally, I can say that there are, it may not work timing wise here, but there is grant funding flowing out for childcare right now, like as we speak, for people to build them. So that may or may not be able to be folded into this project, depending on how that all works. And, it's the government, so your guess is as good as mine sometimes. Okay, I'm going to carry on. What's D? Oh, the gymnasium. Fantastic. Okay, so one of the challenges that we've observed is the strong support for gymnasium style space from the community, which has been, let's say, somewhat accommodated by access to school gyms to date, and presumably would be somewhat accommodated by the replacement school gymnasium in the future, but not I say accommodated as at a level one would normally expect for a community recreation center. So in other words, the school kind of has access to the gym from 7:30 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. Monday to Friday, which essentially cuts off really active in normal times for community to have access to the same space. So you might, what we've done is we've included for your consideration and interest a gymnasium that would be, we think, an appropriate choice size-wise if you wanted to pursue one, and give you the cost to go with it. Gymnasia kind of are like aquatic centers. You sometimes, as soon as you start building one, you kind of got to build one. It's tough to build a half gym. You can, but then you often, we hear reports that you just lament the fact that you only went halfway because you couldn't just get that, you know, you couldn't get all the programming you wanted. You couldn't run 2 volleyball games and so on and so forth. So we have found that one quote unquote full-size gym is really a minimum once you start digging a hole for a gym, practically speaking. It's kind of works out to about 9,500 square feet by the time you get all the parts to it. And my price is buried right now, but it is, okay, 5.5 million full costs. And in this particular gym, it's about 7,000 square feet of gym space, some dedicated storage, and I've allocated some dedicated change rooms just to make sure that there's enough change rooms to go around for the purposes of budgeting at this time. So what's the next page? Benefits. So we have many more opportunities for recreation, fitness, and social gathering. You have everything once we've conquered COVID, that is from large weddings and banquets and community meetings to course sports and activities and drop-in, and you can have day camps, summer camps. Yeah, I mean, everyone here has probably used the gym some point in their life, and they know they have their own experience of what you can use it for. If you had your own, you would have unrestricted use in programming. Some of the challenges include it costs money, and it possibly duplicates some gym access that you kind of already have. So you would have to kind of say, well, I guess it's more important for me to get access all the time than just some of the time. You might, and that's an important thing to understand. And I guess you would also might be duplicating some spaces that are in the core program. So we would fine tune the core program so that wasn't happening. And and I'm sure there's some questions, but here's the math: 7,000 square foot gym, some support spaces. The gross up factor here is 12% for walls and corridors. So it's 9,500 square feet. Construction cost is at $450 a square foot. Those of you who have photographic memories will note that this was less than the aquatic center. So these prices modulate depending on how hard the thing is to build. And that's $5.5 million for that animal. And I'm pausing for questions.
Well, I'll start, I guess. So in the question that came up in the open house was, could a community gymnasium and school gymnasium be connected or combined? And so, so I'm thinking, could there be something like a double gym, for joint use with a divider between or something like that? And I don't know even the legalities. Can you have a high school basketball game going on in one side and a adults program going on the other side? These sort of things. I would just wonder if those were looked at.
Thank you for the question, and I'll let Lori also speak to this, but just briefly, we have asked these questions. We've had the representative from the school district on many of our meetings, and the short answer at this time is no. Lori?
Yeah, I think a big concern was just the flow of the students and having dedicated space for the school children so that they're not interacting with the community public. And that was the biggest barrier in creating a shared space or a shared gym that came from the school district.
And you'd suggested something, Councillor, perhaps about connectivity and so on, which we have also asked. And there was some, let's just say, nervousness on the part of the school district about too many connections that might be difficult to control. So if the school was open and the community center were open, which is going to happen all the time, how do you control flow from various people who may or may not be supposed to be in certain areas? So they were hesitant about physical connections and certainly hesitant about simultaneous use for school use and for community use. At least that's the feedback we've received to date.
Okay, then if I may just follow up then. So if we're basically looking at a dedicated community gymnasium attached to the rec center, I'm just wondering why the need for additional change rooms, you know, isn't kind of one of the points of having a central rec center is to achieve economies of scale, and how does that do that? By having separate change rooms.
Good question. So I'll answer it three ways. First of all, I added some change rooms in because I just didn't want to, in the first instance, promise something and then you realize it had to be bigger later. So I sort of started at the larger side. I agree that a cleverly designed facility should be able to find economies of scale. And the only small trick, which is not insurmountable, it's certainly easy to accommodate, is this kind of question of control. And so typically in a fitness center and aquatic center, it's a pay-per-use setup, and usually you pass the reception desk, you pay your $4.95, and then you get into the change rooms. And once you're in the change rooms, you either have a bracelet or you just made it past reception, and then you're good to go. And once you've left, you're done. And the gymnasium tends to be a drop-in use, which means it can become complicated to use the pool change rooms to use the gymnasium. Now, that's not a reason to throw an extra $2 million at a project to just build some more change rooms. I would agree with that. So I would say that by the time we were done this project, we would want to make sure that the price and the change rooms were adequate and not duplicated. So that's a good question.
I have a question that follows up on that. So when in the slide that you have right there for the gymnasium, it shows washrooms, 500 square feet. Are the washrooms, you were just talking about the change rooms, are the change rooms different from the washrooms?
Well done, you caught us on a typo. They're the same thing.
Oh, so it should be washrooms, additional change rooms.
I think what I'm gonna take this away and make sure that I've sharpened my pencil to be accurate here, and make sure we haven't double dipped into the change rooms and washrooms category. So let me take that away and make sure I come back to you with an accurate description and number.
Okay, thank you.
I have another question, if I may. I see in the whole thing we have an excerpt from the draft needs. So I presume we're going to get a fuller draft needs analysis at some point. But I'm just wondering, when we get that, will it be looking at the current recreational use? You spoke earlier about duplication. So we'll be looking at the current kind of gymnasium kind of uses at other facilities currently in the community. We have, here in Summerland, we have 5 school gyms, including 4 public ones, the Harold Simpson Center, the Badminton Hall, the Banquet Center. So I'm just looking at what are the needs that are, of the community that are currently being met through those existing facilities, and how much of the what's not being met is due to kind of organizational or structural problems, or even a lack of programming. I mean, there's nothing really stopping us right now from having, say, an adult Sunday night basketball in one of the school gyms, but nobody's organized it. So I'm just wondering if the needs analysis will look at what's already out there.
Thank you for your question. Yes is the answer. So I think that, thank you. I think it's a great question, and we'll come back, and we'll come back to you with that information.
If I could jump in too, we did get feedback from the stakeholder organizations that did indicate that there isn't a lot of capacity within the current facilities in relation to like what would be accommodating gymnasium sports in particular. So, but we'll that additional detail is in the public engagement as well.
Thank you. And I think certainly implicit in that question and for all of these parts is to make sure, and again, part of this reason we're meeting with you today is to find out what information you will need in order to help make these tough choices as you go forward. And I don't think any of these choices are necessarily super easy. They are, they have challenges and benefits. So thank you for that. Any other gym related questions? Okay, I'll move on to the last one. This one is the tennis center. So we've got this feedback basically from the from the committee that came forward with some suggestions, and so they had recommended on their part three interior courts. So we have 3 interior courts, a bit of admin space, some washrooms to accommodate as needed. And this, we don't show a walking track here, but this is one of the spaces that might actually accommodate a walking track. So, so I put that out there for consideration or debate. So the benefits, so there's a additional bad weather activity space. Maybe sometimes this might be used for a day camp or something. This picks up on the regional draw, which again wasn't particularly high. Having a regional draw did not peak in the public engagement. But this would be an example if you of a regional draw. It could accommodate pickleball, could include a walking track. The challenge is that it seemed to have a low desire within the community engagement within the questionnaire. Is a destination draw core to this project? That's a challenge to consider. Additional operating costs and tennis flooring is not always conducive. It's not the same flooring as you'd use for basketball. So it's a bit of a challenge to overemphasize the multi-purpose nature of this space. You can use it for multi-purpose, but it's kind of built for tennis. And then the nets and the posts, you can take them down and put them up, but I think they typically kind of go up and stay up unless they come down for like a summer or something. So they have multi-purpose uses, but they're typically challenging to use as multi-purpose as a gym would be used. So 21,600 square feet gets you the courts, and there's a little bit of extra space for admin and some washrooms just to accommodate, as needed for that facility. So it gets you to 26,700 square feet. This is a relatively low-cost building to build, so it's $250 a square foot. And so we're at 8.7 million at this point in this exercise is the tennis center. And that's my last slide for this item.
If I may ask a question again regarding the costs. So I know construction costs are increasing, but I've never seen a 3-court indoor facility at this level of cost before. Last year, Salmon Arm built a 3-court indoor facility for $2 million, which was considered high, and so I'm just and that was a standalone structure. So I'm just kind of again wondering, like to drill down on those costs and wondering how you could come up with something like that, and secondly, if 3 courts is seen as a regional facility, then what about looking at something like a 1 or 2 court that would just meet local needs?
Sure. 1 or 2 courts, a good question. I'll go look up that Salmon Arm building for sure, and the size and the construction. I'm not yeah, I'm happy to learn more. It's tough to build a municipal building I find it's difficult to build a municipal building for less than 250 square foot, but I'll take that as a challenge and go see if I can find out more for sure.
I have a question. In all of this, I haven't seen whether it's a 1 or 2 story. Is there an option to put something like this instead of having its own footprint? It could be a 2nd story to an aquatic center, or is that something we aren't talking about at this point?
You mean the tennis center or any of the facilities we've spoken about?
Well, or any of them, a gymnasium, a tennis bubble, a primary care. I'm just wondering what that looks.
Thank you for the question. Yes, the short answer, of course, you can do 2 stories, and we do it all the time. And, Penticton's a good example with 2 stories. And classically, the fitness center might go up on top of the administration to look down into the pool. I just wanted to bring this up so you can see the various scales of the objects. Yep. Short answer is, of course. The long answer is, elevators and stairs then come into play, which is a little bit of added cost. Typically, when you're administering a building, everything on the floor is easier to sort of control and administer rather than having 2 stories. And the last thing is your pool tends to be what's called a long span structure, which is to say it's not full of walls and columns. So putting stuff on tops of aquatic centers tends to be quite difficult because you already got these large spans you're trying to get clear across the pools. But all that is to say, yes, you can do 2 stories. So my last slide in this section, we'll just take if we need a little bio break, we can do that before we go on to the primary healthcare, is just our questions that we thought we would ask. And they include the following: thoughts and reactions to the public and stakeholder engagement findings. That was Megan's section. Any questions, any additional questions about the core program and secondary program? We've been collecting questions along the way, which I've written down. So if there's anything else, any additional information that we can provide at this stage before we submit our final report to help you in your next stage, that we'd be interested. And the last question was, is there potential to expand community access to the new Summerland Secondary School Gymnasium, which is sort of, we've talked a bit about already as well. So does anybody want to participate in these questions or have anything additional to say before you take our next item?
Mayor Boot, I have a quick question.
Go ahead, Councillor Trainer.
Thank you. Can you see me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I just wanted to know, Glenn, is there anything that we've missed in all of this that we might have not thought of or that didn't show up in the public engagement that other communities have? I can't think of anything specifically. I just want to make sure that we've covered everything and things that we might not have thought of. Other uses or rooms or anything that you can think of?
That's a great question. No, I don't think so. And that was really where I think the additional parts, the enhancement program came from, was to just try and scoop up any other things that people might be interested in or that we heard. What are other people doing? No, the other community centers are not building anything different. They're just building more or less of what we've recommended here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Trainer. Glenn, I have another question. We haven't talked about, and maybe this is premature, but has any discussion been going underway, and maybe this is for Lori as well, about the different timelines that the various collaborators are on in terms of the piece that they're advocating for?
Madam Mayor, are you referring, can you give me an example? Which kind of collaborators?
We know, obviously for the district, the need for the recreation and fitness center, or sorry, for the aquatic and fitness center. I'm speaking about the primary health component or the childcare space component, although I know that that's, that was separate, that was child minding. And also the gymnasium for the high school. I think that we're all on different timelines. I'm wondering if you can just clarify for all of us any discussions that you might have had on those.
Yeah, thank you. Great. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good question. We have debated all of those items more to some extent or another. So the licensed childcare, as we discussed, we'll know more as Lori gets her draft in and as March approaches. Then we'll all look forward to that information. We haven't had a conversation with any specific operator or anyone else on that, so we don't really know more, except that it seemed to be highlighted. That particular item came up during the engagement processes as an apparent need. The gymnasium, yes. So the replacement gymnasium, which is going to largely be equivalent to the current in terms of the fact it's simply going to be a gym it'll be a nicer gym with more fitness. I think it has more weight space and so on, but I don't think they're building a double gym per se. So they're enlisting consultants currently, and I think they're, Lori will correct me, but I'm thinking they're proceeding with design and construction in the next 2 years. So it's happening as we speak. And then the primary healthcare, a really good question. And we have a whole slide to that debate coming up. So if we can hold that, if that's okay, we're going to hold on to that thought for just a second. And Lori, what have I missed? Or Megan?
The school gymnasium could be, earliest construction I've heard is spring of 2021, likely fall of 2021 as far as their timelines.
Okay, so given that, it kind of precludes it from being part of this project then, does it? Yes. Is that what I'm seeing, Glenn? Was that a nod?
They haven't gone into detailed design work yet. So that's their next step. So they're just securing the funding and approvals through the ministry. Then the next step is detailed design. And we have asked to be part of those discussions. And if they could invite us to hear what's going on, and if there is any opportunity that we could somehow look at some sort of joint use, I'll be a voice at that table, but that has not started yet.
And for my part, Madam Mayor, for my part, yeah, so they would be ahead of us by, by a fair shot in terms of probably a year or two. But I never got the feeling that we had definitely asked the questions of what it might mean to have the projects come together or run concurrently, but I never really got the feeling from the feedback that it would actually have any benefit. I don't think the notion of the rec center gluing on to the new gym was received strongly. And I don't think that the access to the new gym was going to be any more or less really than the access to the existing gym. So it'd be important for us to understand where the gym was and how you might be able to use it so that there would be a convenient access. That I think is important. But I don't feel as if having the projects being built or designed concurrently is necessary personally.
So from what you've just said then, is it generally thought that if we're going to consider having component D, which is the gym, we should look at it as a community use gym and not associate it with a high school? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I'm really thinking that the thing that I've called Enhancement Program D is a district-owned and operated gymnasium for your use.
Okay, thank you.
Full stop, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Carlson, did you have your hand raised?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Oh, okay. Anyone else?
I have a couple things, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just wondering, in the needs analysis, if we could get an assessment of the secondary how each secondary spaces achieves greatest economies of scale in an overall project, and also if there'll be some sort of assessment on the operating costs and revenues for each of the secondary spaces, and if there's any opportunity for one space that might be a greater revenue generator could help subsidize the core facility which we know is probably going to be a money loser, and then following on that, if is there any way we are able to evaluate the spaces on any kind of common criteria? It's really hard to quantify something like be inclusive and welcoming because they kind of apply to everything. But I'm thinking something like a decision-making matrix, like what we received from our works project last week, that project prioritization framework, where there's criteria and weightings that we can use to prioritize everything. That takes not takes into account not just the capital costs, but the whole life costs and operating costs and revenues and all that sort of thing. Does that make sense?
Your questions definitely make sense. We will review, some of these things might be falling outside of the scope of the project we're working on. Doesn't mean that we cannot find a way to either report back to you how we can get you there. But the questions make sense, and they have to do with the operating costs, revenues where available for each of the choices, and a matrix to help you make some of these choices, is what I hear.
Yes, thank you.
Lori, did you want to weigh in on that, or is that for another discussion?
I think we'll have to have a discussion with the consultants about what would be involved in doing that, and then we can assess if that's something that can be taken care of as part of this phase of the project, or if we need to look at an expanded scope. But I'll have to have a conversation offline on that.
Councillor Traynor.
This question is for Glenn again. I'm just wondering, are there any examples around the province of where community centers and high schools are joined in any fashion at all that you know of?
That is an excellent question. Again, I'm putting it on my to-do list. The only one I know is actually the one that's near us here in Vancouver. And I've just lost the name of it, but it's a remnant of an old 70s idea. Oh, I guess Britannia too. There's two of them in Vancouver that are remnants of the 1970s, really, where they attempted to kind of collide multiple uses together. And I think that they are largely being extracted from one another over time. They're finding the overlap between school use and community use is proving to be, like, if they're too connected, it becomes too difficult to control who's supposed to be in the spaces. But it doesn't mean that I can't go look around and see what new and interesting things are happening.
Okay, yeah, I know, that's good to know. I appreciate the challenges that you've talked about and that we've heard briefly today. And it's also good to know, I guess, that there are other projects like this. There's a couple of them in the province, and that they're moving away from that. Mm-hmm. So that would be good to know as well. And then if there is one and it is working, that would be good. Anyway, I totally understand the challenges. They make sense. But a bit more information on that would help for sure.
No problem. I'm definitely will add to that to my to-do list. Thank you. You know, from an architect's point of view, I am intrigued by the idea of a combination. It really, I think, comes largely down to cooperation amongst, you know, governmental entities, being school districts and then recreation departments. And sometimes, you know, sometimes we have more or less control over those things. But I'll take that away. Thank you.
Okay, I guess we can move on then, Glenn.
Sure. Shall we just go forward? Is everybody okay without a break? That's fine, Madam Mayor.
Council, what's your wish?
Everybody's good?
I guess so.
Let's go.
No answer.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you for the feedback. And I will say before I move on, there is, you know, we are, at the end of this, perhaps we'll recap our schedule. The final report is due early in 2021. But if somebody dreams of something they want to ask me, please do send it through the proper channels, because right now is the time to ask questions, because we're still writing the report. It's easy for us to make changes as we go forward. Okay, now let's dig into the primary care and see what the next slide looks like. And it's on to Megan now to give us a more in-depth feedback or a summary of what the engagement looked like.
Thanks, Glenn. Yes, just to circle back to the engagement on we did ask sort of a separate set of questions for the healthcare component. so as not to intertwine them too much and get people confused. So we did ask what people's hopes were for primary health, medical, and wellness services in Summerland. So another vision question. And the top three were timely and convenient walk-in services and convenient location, better access to family doctors, access to a wide variety of health and wellness services in Summerland. So expanding not just the basics, but maybe some other opportunities. And then just highlighting also, when we asked about the vision question, some of those priorities that might have been associated with co-location with a recreation center tended to be lower on the list. So having services under one roof was a little bit lower priority. Collaboration with the rec center as well. And there are a few quotes that hopefully you had a chance to read when reviewing this presentation, but they really speak to the difficulty of finding a doctor in Summerland, having to drive for health services and that barrier, and the connection between rehabilitation and recreation rather than necessarily recreation and primary care doctor, family physician type services. So that was interesting. Next slide, please. Stakeholders had a lot of great input through both the questionnaire and the online workshops. We had a session dedicated to healthcare practitioners, organizations, and allied health professions. And there was a particular alignment around a few key needs, improving access to healthcare and eliminating barriers by providing more, if possible, in Summerland itself. The value of having a collaboration and potential multidisciplinary teams working together was highlighted as a major benefit to not just to patients, but also the practitioners and the service providers. Office and drop-down space was noted from those who work at Summerland Health Center and Interior Mental Health as well, the need for that space. And then also from stakeholders, I think vulnerable populations were top of mind. And just noting that it's really beneficial to have primary health and stakeholders to represent those folks who are often missed or underrepresented. Yeah, next slide, please. So while it's not easy to define, there's definitely an awareness of the potential benefits of co-locating these two facilities from the public. However, many of the comments highlighted allied health services such as rehabilitation or physiotherapy and an improved range of services rather than focusing necessarily on the interaction between doctors and recreation services directly. Stakeholders, while they were very enthusiastic about needing improvements overall and removing barriers, the discussion around the benefits of co-location generally centered around there's an opportunity to remove the stigma of accessing some types of services and also increasing the awareness of available services. And I think overall we captured that the general feeling that was that like being physically attached to the recreation center was not necessarily an essential requirement for improved healthcare services. We definitely heard the need for improved access to healthcare in general. Next slide. And just to highlight while there's not as much support for funding the healthcare clinic compared to the recreation center components, where there was over 80%, it's still pretty surprising actually that there was over 50% of the public survey respondents who supported some amount of funding from the district. From the comments, those who didn't, or who were less likely to support this initiative, expressed concern about the District of Summerland funding healthcare when traditionally it's a provincial responsibility. Concerns that there was a benefit for for-profit entities at the primary care level. Although the steering committee did point out that doctors, while they're technically for-profit, they're limited in what they can charge because they're tied to the provincial health model. So there are also other models available that we'll be talking about that incorporate not-for-profit organizations potentially and community health. And then just to inform the next steps of the project, it was really clear that people wanted more information before they form a final opinion, particularly around funding models, partnerships, funding availability, tax implications. Yeah, they just wanted a better sense of how this would actually look, I think, before many of the public, the community members wanted to form their final opinion. Yeah, and I think I'm gonna leave it there just because we're running a little short on time and I want to get to the rest of it. So if there are any questions about the public engagement, I can field those now, but otherwise I would suggest Alex and Glenn launch into the next phase.
Any questions about the public engagement piece of the primary care? Okay, thank you, Megan.
There we go. Thank you, Megan. Okay, so this is, I will just briefly say that if the momentum were to suggest that this is to be pursued, the primary healthcare, there would be, of course, more work done. So this, and in this particular package, we've included maybe an ideal or an example of a primary healthcare facility that could be co-located or attached directly to the recreation and aquatic center. In this particular example, which rounds out around 10,000 square feet of usable space and 12,000 square feet of gross floor area, we included a waiting area and lobby and reception, office for manager and bookkeeper, 10 small offices for telehealth counseling and allied healthcare use, 4 shared offices for physicians, 24 exam rooms, 2 treatment and procedure rooms, sterilization room, and kitchen. This program was generated from input and interaction with the steering committee, and perhaps at first blush, which is our first sort of stab at it, represents perhaps a semi-idealized program to collect and accommodate the primary healthcare in Summerland and provide enough general space for expansion or attracting new physicians, which is a key factor here. Again, it could be smaller and it could be bigger, and these questions I think might be something that we come as to a next step piece. What do I have next? Okay, so benefits. There is a need for primary care in Summerland. This is an opportunity to consolidate and attract physicians in allied health. It provides central integrated services. Now the challenges are, this is atypical within a recreation, like if it's truly connected to the recreation facility or part of it, it's not typical. It would be a new model. Maybe it's a benefit too, but it's a factor. You become dependent, if it's district owned, then it becomes dependent on viable tenants and lease arrangements. So it's a risk item. And the other risk item should be fair to consider is that the kind of building you built for primary healthcare is not typically the kind of building that is easily transferable into a recreation center. So it's hard to turn, it's more difficult to turn like exam rooms into a large multi-purpose room. It just tends not to be in the grain. It can be done, but it's not typical. Okay, so just a recap on what this particular example is showing. Again, it's an example that was workshopped as part of the steering committee. So it has the parts that I suggested, which was 9,500 square feet of usable space. It's got some gross up area for a total of 12,500 square feet. This particular construction cost, I will observe, is I'm calling move-in ready, which is to say it's got all the walls, the furniture, like the built-in furniture, reception desks, and a number of the kind of technical components that would be included. There are other choices we could make. You could build what's called a shell building, which is basically an empty shell. And then you could have somebody else do all of that work. I'm just going to close my door, sorry. Apologies, must be dishes time. Okay. Okay, so like I said, this could also be, you could also build a less expensive building and have your tenant fit it out. In other words, a tenant would build all the walls and put in the fixtures. But What I did here is just assume that the tenant is basically could just move in with their chairs and paper and lab coats and so on, and they would be ready to go. So that's the kind of cost that I've put here. The next slide, what I've tried to do is scratch my head about what are the kinds of questions and challenges there are with a couple of different ways of doing this. And so this little chart or matrix looks at 3 different strategies for this facility and what its benefits and risks are. So on the left, I have a co-located aquatic and recreation center with primary care, and really built in one fell swoop. And it has all of the benefits that comes from health and wellness center sort of embedded, so that you would have one-stop shop for health and wellness. One door for the rec center, another door for the primary health care, but they'd be connected, and they would have all the benefits that come with having a connected health and wellness facility. And then you would build it in one go. So that's number 1. Number 2 is the same idea. It's still a district facility, but it's phased. So we're going to build the rec center first, but we're going to design the project to accommodate the primary health care appropriately for a future phase, and nicely added on in some other day. So that's item 2. And item 3 is, let's just disconnect the 2. So we have an aquatic and recreation center, and the primary care is not co-located and may or may not be funded by any number of sources. So if I'll then describe some of the items to go with these. So the location for items 1 and 2 is co-located, presumably on the same site, and then item 3 is not co-located. We have already discussed general benefits of co-location, but it is not required. There is no. We would suggest there's no. Let's put it another way. If it happened to be the case that the new primary healthcare center was 3 streets over or 3 blocks over, everything would still work fine. You'd still have a recreation center that worked great, and you'd have a primary health center that worked great. And lucky for you all live in Summerland, and getting the 3 blocks is really not that difficult. And so that would work too. So it's not like you've lost something by not co-locating them. Its co-location comes with the full benefits of the health and wellness located center. Capital costing. So for the item 1, the district presumably is paying the capital cost of some version of a building, whether it's the full piece or what I call the shell building for someone else to come along and fit out. For the phased one, we could perhaps consider a strategy with a district or a private entity, depending on how the property would work or how the funding would work. And then, of course, item 3, if it's not co-located, then it could be district paying for it, or a private entity paying for it on another property, for sure. Funding. How will we get money for all of this, or how does the money work? Well, certainly, I think part of the interesting energy with item 1 is that you get to write a grant application for a health and wellness center and a combined recreation and primary care center, which is a new and interesting and optimistic facility for your citizens. So I think you get showcase exposure, possibly showcase exposure when writing for grants, or when you're trying to get interest from other funding sources. If you're not able to get the funding from sources and you're not feeling comfortable with the capital outlay, then that's certainly item 2 is a good strategy. So you just plan for it in the future, and then you figure out how you get the money as you go forward. Item 3 then has the opportunity of saying, you know what, I just don't feel comfortable with the capital money, or even trying to find it, or I can't find it. So I'm going to make it another group's issue, or you can pay for it. Benefits for all 3 is, of course, health and wellness. And as I've already discussed, there's kind of a cachet that comes with the combined center. But functionally speaking, because if you're walkable municipality, you also get high level of health and wellness and functionality if they're not glued together, in my opinion. And then finally is risk. Risk just kind of goes from high to low. It's not terribly mathematical, but if you build it and then you need to get it filled and make it work, then the risk is high. If you phase it, that reduces your risk because it gives you a chance to wait and see or get some more money some other way. And if you don't co-locate it, the risk is low because you can either do it on as a separate project, as a separate time, or not do it at all. That would be your choice. That was a lot of talking for one slide. I hope most of that made sense. I just have 2 more slides and we'll definitely start I'm sure, an interesting debate. These are just some notes, and Alex, when we get to the Q&A, Alex, we can come back to these ones and you can jump in, but I'll just read through them right now. When it comes to co-location, these are just some additional notes. Primary medical care is a vital community amenity. What really applies to all the options. The existing arrangements appear to be unsustainable or insufficient to recruit younger doctors, et cetera. That's some of the information we've received from stakeholders and from meeting with people. There are a number of ways to create the space with variations. There's a choice of a conventional for-profit medical practice, commercial leasehold to recover construction costs. So you then basically you build it and then you lease it. B, a primary care network site operated by Interior Health, salary providers, or division of family practice would probably attract provincial capital funding. I'll let Alex speak more to that if there's questions. And then, whoops, it should say C, a nonprofit community health center, usually multidisciplinary, more types of providers, operated by nonprofit society, would require local taxpayer support to build and possibly part subsidize with lease payments to recover. I think this means higher support from the municipality to make the whole operation work. I'll go to the last slide and then I'm sure there's lots of questions. Oh, second last slide. Interior health staff would come from Penticton only for a few sessions per week, share a relatively small amount of dedicated space for drop-in offices plus planned access to shared small group rooms for interior health programs. I think it's an interior health option we're looking at. Shared programming would feature development of a few recreation plus facilities, swimming pool design for rehab programs of all ages, workshops for adult arts and crafts, dedicated program space for adult day respite, childcare service designed for short-term use. We talked a bit about that already. Early learning and behavioral assessments for counseling rooms. And non-co-location means that the timelines for the recreation facility and clinic do not align. Access, security, safety, infection control concerns are not compatible. Oh, that just means that there's 2 different kinds of requirements for those items. And then there's the financial risk we spoke to. Okay, I'm sure there's lots of questions.
So just to confirm that there's no cost savings whatsoever, capital or operational, by co-locating it. It's the same if it's whether it's a standalone.
Yes, within a percentile, yes, that's confirmed.
Thank you.
I'm wondering, I see there's a couple of primary physicians on the line. I'm just wondering if the district were to undertake this project and have this facility, what kind of conversation has been had with the primary care group about long-term leases, about what kind of investment they would be making annually into this facility? Have we gone that far yet?
Burley, do you want to speak to that? Is Morelli, is Dr.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yep.
There he is.
Dr. Catamaran should be on the line. There he is.
Hi. Hi. Yeah, thanks, Councillor Aaron. We would, the whole reason we've engaged in this is we are looking at sustainability of primary care services being provided in Summerland, and with the future vision of what the ministry is looking at for patient medical home centered around a primary care physician's office with team-based care. So there would be the expectation is a long-term commitment. The goal is to move all of the current physicians and clinics into this new facility to plan for the next number of decades. The expectation would be that we would be paying at least similar to what we are paying now at our existing locations.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to follow up then. So if the district does move forward and we want to do this, prior to this going forward and investing up to $8 million, would that partnership have to be in place? Maybe that's not a question for Dr. V, but maybe that's a question for someone else. I'm not sure.
I might be able to speak a little bit to it. I think what we would envision from a physician community and just from some experience working on this in Penticton for recruitment in Penticton is it definitely is a partnership of the expectation would not be for municipality to take this on their own. And we've had some experience with Princeton of where municipality works together with Interior Health and divisions of family practice. So there would be significant involvement in the planning of this, as well as fundraising. There's a South Okanagan Similkameen Healthcare Society, which is a new not-for-profit that would probably, I would expect, get involved with respect to fundraising. So I don't know if that speaks to
that help,
component. Yeah. And then if anybody's interested, I mean, I can speak to why we feel there are benefits from a healthcare perspective to our population with respect to co-locating. Why are we even interested in co-locating?
I think that would be very valuable, but I'll let others.
I agree, Councillor Carlson. I would like to hear that as well.
Yeah. So thanks again for giving me the. So if we look at where primary care is going now, and both from our experience as physicians, but also just looking from ministry vision for primary health care, it is this patient medical home with team-based care and support systems. So a lot of it, looking at nurse practitioners, looking at mental health, social work. A lot of what we're facing in primary care now with our elderly population is chronic disease management. With both elderly population and the rest of our population, a significant part of our day-to-day practice is mental health and substance use. And there's been a real transition in my 30 years of primary care to moving towards true preventive care. And so when we look at the benefits of co-location, to be able to provide both our elderly population and mental health substance use, I was involved in setting up a clinic, Martin Street in Penticton, where we serve that population, of being able to just take our patients next door, instead of me telling them and advising them that, going and exercising or joining RECO, would be helpful, actually going over and taking them there, of just walking across the hallway. So it's having that physical co-location, I think, really would allow us to truly promote primary health care the way it needs to be delivered in current times.
If possible, I'd like to add that because I'm going to have to go. I have a 3 o'clock meeting. So I'm Margie Krabby. I'm one of the other family physicians at the Rosedale Clinic in town. And I'm also, both Morelli and I are intimately involved in family practice residency training program that's run out of Penticton. So I want to put in a plug for that because we've worked really hard and we've graduated 11 doctors in the last 3 years, 9 of whom continue to practice in our community. and family practice is changing. Doctors don't buy clinics anymore, and we don't own our clinic. I think Morelli and his group do own their clinic, but the way medicine is practiced is very different. So we're not owner operators. We're basically renter business owners. Recruiting physicians into our group practices is not always that easy, and you need to make it attractive because the young physicians that are coming out want a very different style of practice, and they are looking for a large team group practice. And so, you know, in Summerland, we've worked hard. Morelli has been actually the forefront to provide after hours care. It used to be 365 days a year. Now we've not been providing holidays. Now we're losing after hours clinic on other nights. So really, I think part of what Morelli and I and the group feel is that we're busting at the seams. We don't have space to bring in these allied providers. We often don't even now have space to recruit other physicians. And so we see this as a sustainability piece. We see this as an ability to have a model that is attractive to bringing in physicians into the community. So these physicians that we're training that may be looking for jobs, they're interested in this style of practice. So this is really kind of a changing face of medicine. And I don't think the average citizen understands that when they're saying, I need a doctor, you know, part of that attachment piece. So we see this as an attractive model of care that could service the community, be in the downtown core, be very accessible, and then have this kind of a collaborative approach with other multidisciplinary providers.
Thank you.
That's exactly what I wanted to hear. So I appreciate that information. Thank you to both of you.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Barkwill, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I can't really see anybody, but so given what we've heard here, and I have to agree that just from what people I've spoken to, there's a lot of intangible benefits to being co-located, and something, if possible, I'd like to see. But the financial risk of it is a big hurdle. And given that current physicians have lease commitments and such right now, do you see that it's possible that we might be able to get at least a large percentage of this space with lease commitments prior to construction, with a target date, say, of 2023 or 24, whatever the completed construction date might be? Because that's, I think, might be a deciding factor. If we can have certain lease commitments, then it would certainly help to see this happen.
Morelli?
Councillor Barkwill, I can speak to that. And I'm going to preface this by saying there should be reasonable evidence that we don't have a conflict of interest in being interested in this, and we're really interested in sort of the legacy of primary care in Summerland, in that we do, so my partner, I do own our building, and you know, in creating this is because we would lose that lease, and we're absolutely prepared to see that go, because this is the only way to keep it primary care sustainable. So from our clinic, we are the landlords, and we are also leaseholders to a number of group of physicians, and we've spoken openly that that basically at any time we're able to create this new model, we are ready to move over. The other clinic, Rosedale, where the majority of physicians are, again, they would need a bit more planning because they are leaseholders, but they are prepared to move. We as a physician group, as I said, see that this is the only way we are going to be able to keep primary care sustainable in Summerland. So yeah, absolutely. So the shorter answer is absolutely yes. You would have all the physicians moving over, and you know, we're teaching in both of the clinics, so you'd have residents moving over. We are currently about to try and recruit a nurse practitioner, which we don't have room for, but we're going to figure out some way. So yes, there would be tenants there ready for whenever this place is ready.
So we'd have to figure out the construction costs lease costs and everything like that and get that hammered down prior to going ahead, just as if we were a corporate citizen, which we are. We're the corporation of the District of Summerland. So it would, there is definitely a commitment, and it sounds like we should be able to work something out that works to everybody's benefit. So I'm feeling pretty good.
Thank
And
you,
I think-
Councillor Barkwell. Sorry, Dr. Krabby, I'm just going to ask Glenn if you could stop sharing your screen so that we can see each other as we're having this conversation. Thank you so much. Okay, sorry, Dr. Krabby.
No, no worries. Sorry about that, Mayor Boot. Obviously, the other partners involved, to include the divisions of family practice and interior health, would have a lot of information about what kind of financial relationships could be considered.
Any other questions? Alex, we haven't heard much from you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to comment. I have a small part to play in this project, and I like to just there's not a lot of time left, so I'll try and be succinct. I think it's enormously important for any community to have stable family practice service. And what I've heard from the physicians in Summerland, they're an exceptionally dedicated group that's made a huge effort already to sort of stretch the limits of the funding system to provide round the clock, round the year care, and have embraced this new notion of multidisciplinary care. So that piece I understand, and I think they've exemplified that very well. The trouble with bringing in people like me is we make everything more complicated. And so I would say that healthcare is extremely complicated to think about in a situation like this. There is no doubt it is going to be extremely important to the residents of Summerland and the area. I'm sure they're going to place it very highly. In my view, there's not a really strong connection with recreation services and primary care. The fact that you're in the process of creating a building just now creates a certain kind of opportunity, but it is a complicated thing to work through. Councillor Barkwell, I really liked what you had to say about there's an interest, a commitment, a will to do something. Let's figure out a way to do it, because I kind of think that's the way to go forward here. That it may not be exactly the recreation center that is the partnership relationship between District of Summerland and the Summerland area physicians. But there's no doubt in my mind that if you want to have decent primary care services in the Summerland area, an organization like the district or something very like it is going to have to get behind it, because family practice in this province at this time is extremely difficult to deliver. That's why we have waiting lists. That's why we have people who can't get into doctors. That's why young docs don't want to go into conventional medical practice. That's why we can't fit enough nurse practitioners into the clinic spaces we have. It needs something very substantial to change. And the exciting, innovative part of what I've been hearing in this project is the notion that the district and the local docs and other healthcare providers, and hopefully Interior Health, would partner together to make something happen. Because I think that's really the essence of moving forward in this province, and not just in this province, across Canada and to some extent North America. These are global problems that are affecting delivery of the most important part of our healthcare system, primary care services. It's critical, and residents get that, but it's really hard to make it work given all of the pressures that are affecting care providers and communities. So a partnership of some kind, absolutely yes. Recreation center, co-location, maybe, it would be my opinion, maybe, but there's a lot of details to work through to ensure that could happen. So that would be kind of my long-winded answer, Mayor, to my view on all of this.
Appreciate that. Councillor Holmes, followed by Councillor Barkwell.
Yeah, thank you. I'm completely buy into the whole primary care network concept. I think I'm all keen for us exploring a partnership. Though I have to say that the idea of a co-located with the rec center does raise a lot of concerns for me. By putting the two together, as we just heard, it complicates both. And as I said in the draft needs assessment, it's almost worth looking at the primary care network as a separate project because it's based on its own merits. I just risk that we're overcomplicating things, and you know, and both could not go ahead because of that. And there's also, I guess, the thing about which we haven't really talked about, parking requirements for this new complex that we're building. But I worry about us creating this what could end up being an enormous soulless building in our downtown core, which just ends up sucking the life out of all of the rest of downtown, because that's our community hub and that's where everybody goes. And when there doesn't seem real any economic benefit to putting them together, it's not necessarily a bad thing having separate buildings and where people can just walk across the street and maybe stop for a cup of coffee and go to the shops in between. So, you know, I'm you know, these sort of things are going on in my head, and I'm supportive of the idea, but I'm just not convinced they need to be all together.
Councillor Barkwell and then Councillor Van Elfen.
I was just going to point out that our new CAO is the former Assistant Deputy Minister of Health in Alberta. So hopefully he brings some experience of some kind that's transferable for what might be a complicated set of negotiations. And I don't actually share Councillor Holmes' concerns here. I think a lot of people that might be coming have mobility issues, and even to walk from, say, where the Aquatic Center now is, all the way up to the Beanery for a coffee is something that they would rather not do. And they would rather not walk through the snow to a different physiotherapy location. I don't understand the soulness. Will be part of the downtown. I think it would add to the downtown. Hopefully we get some architecture to the building, that green space that adds to the downtown. But anyhow, one way or the other, that's just another wrinkle. I think the real hurdle will be the negotiations. If we can get the financing figured out, then the rest will be fall out of that. So, thanks.
Over to you, Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too can see the huge potential in this collaborative primary care model. The only, you know, I don't know if it's a concern or if it's a premature concern, is that, you know, rough numbers for the Aquatic Center down and dirty, we're at $40 or $45 million, you know, give or take, depending on how much we want and how much we don't want. And that'll have to go to a public referendum at the next election. So if you join the primary healthcare building on top of that, you know, there's risk of a referendum not being passed, possibly. So, but I understand the importance attached may not necessarily be that important, but a question through to Dr. Krabby, if I may. Have you guys looked at the lower floor on Wharton Street at the new development there? Is that anything interesting at all? Has it got enough space? I'm just curious.
Sure, Councillor Van Elfen. We've I haven't been the primary one engaged in that, but there has been one of my colleagues who, and Dr. Venkataraman is, looks like he can chime in. We have already explored the space in the prior Wharton Street building. They couldn't offer us enough square footage there, and they wouldn't really accommodate our needs. So that has not been a viable option. There have been in the community some other private discussions around medical clinics that have been a consideration. I don't know the status on those currently. And that would be, I guess, another question. I think our choice is to have this as again, a divisions and then maybe interior health and community project, but obviously, you know, people are looking to funding those types of models. So that has been something that one of my colleagues has looked into, private ventures. It is a large space. Right now we are at 7 or 8 physicians, but Morelli's practice has 4 physicians right now, Morelli, potentially 5 physicians they're looking at, and a nurse practitioner. We currently now have a social worker engaged with us, again, under this patient medical home. There could be a role for an occupational therapist or a physiotherapist. You start to add up the numbers. You really have a number of allied providers working under one roof. And when we were actually operating in a non-COVID time, each physician, when we're seeing patients, if there were 5 of us, we each have 2 exam rooms. If we have a medical student or a resident, 12 exam rooms. The numbers start to go up pretty quickly. So they weren't able to accommodate. It's a unique space, square footage that would be needed to accommodate all of the providers in Summerland.
Thank you for the answer.
Morelli, did you have anything more to add to that? You're good. Okay. Okay, any other questions? Councillor Barkwell.
So, you know, has the school district expressed any thoughts one way or the other that this facility and this part of the facility would be on school district land? Do they have any concerns with that part? It's not a typical use of school district land, and so I have to worry about that a little bit.
We haven't got into discussions at this point as far as land and doing a site analysis on where the new facility would be located. Obviously, this school district property would be one that we would consider, but at this phase, what we've been doing for the last 4 months is looking at the needs assessment side of things. The next phase would, once we determine what it is we want to build, we would be looking at sites and having those discussions with school district and exploring what lands the facility could be built on.
Councillor Traynor.
I'm just wondering what happens next in terms of the primary care facility. Where do we go from here? I know that the final report's coming in early 2021, but when will we be making a decision on this?
I think, so early 2021, we're looking to have the needs assessment and the final wrap up of the community engagement. One of the things that's coming out of this and will likely be in the needs assessment is, you know, what do we need if we want to proceed with exploring the primary health care center further. Probably, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Glenn, but one of the recommendations probably coming out of this would be a business case, or looking at the various models and what that could look like. Alex might want to add to that as well. Alex, your thoughts as far as exploring primary health care and next steps to determining how to move forward?
Sorry, Laurie, were you addressing that to me? The line cut out for a moment there. Yes. Well, I do think that a business case of some kind would be very helpful, because there are a number of kind of fussy details that can snarl things up in terms of different, effectively private business owners coming together under some kind of single roof working collectively. You can imagine all kinds of issues related to that. I think that the relationship with interior health and the role of some of their staff, some mention in the consultation process of more rehabilitation oriented services and co-location with the recreation. Obviously, those are currently a mix of private providers in the community and interior health employees, many of which I understand commute to work in Summerland. So there are quite a lot of details. I think one of the fundamental concerns about this kind of arrangement is that what my limited understanding of design concepts for recreation is about open, inclusive access for the community. One of the concerns for medical practice design is about privacy, confidentiality, and in some cases, security issues related to people who might suffer mental health issues, geriatric individuals, and so on. So there are a lot of details that need to be considered in order to decide that the strategy can go forward. It's a bit of going back and forth from the big picture to the micro level, and a business case is typically the approach to get at that, bring stakeholders together and work their way through it. I'd like to just return to my fundamental point, though. I think that these primary care problems are affecting communities all across British Columbia. I won't get into the rest of Canada, but in British Columbia, there's profound problems. And it is going to take a whole of community, a whole of society kind of approach to tackle these things. We can't just leave it up to the docs. They've got plenty to do coming through their office door every day, let alone the issues of training the next generation of doctors and nurses, nurse practitioners, physios, clinical pharmacists, etc. So it is a whole of community issue. And I do believe it deserves the attention of the community to resolve it. And if possible, to mobilize the community resources to do something about it. And that would be sort of a starting point, I think, if council were able to say, yes, we care enough about this to want to do something without necessarily a very explicit idea right away about the best way to do that. And that's what the next phase of analysis, business case, if you want to call it that, or operational planning would lead to is saying, okay, we know we want to do something. Now, what's the best way to serve everyone's purposes here? And to I think it was Councillor Van Alphen's point, bring the community along with it to say, yes, okay, traditionally this is a provincial jurisdiction, blah, 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 but there's a piece in here for the District of Summerland to contribute. So that's what I would see the purpose of the next stage, Councillor Traynor. The purpose of the next stage would be to flesh out some of those details, engage all of the stakeholders. This was a fairly speedy process, and come up with a clear plan that would be sustainable longer term.
Thanks, Alex. That really helps out. It gives some really good context, so thank you.
Glenn, I have a question. This goes way back to our talking before the primary, before we started talking about the primary care. And that is, it was pretty clear that a lot of people in the community engagement piece wanted to have us consider a walking track. And I think that you said that a walking track could be accommodated either at the gymnasium or at around the outside of the tennis court, that facility, the tennis center. Did I hear you say that? And I guess my next question would be for Lori. How much weight are you putting on that particular piece that came out of the engagement? Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll answer first and then I'll hand it to Lori. So walking tracks typically are shoehorned into projects conveniently and therefore inexpensively. So often you'll see them in arenas, tennis centers, double gymnasia or something like that, where you already have a really big space and if you can just wrap a track around the outside, maybe on the second floor, it's just like a couple dollars really to add it in. In your core program, you really do have conducive spaces to walking track easily because you have multi-purpose rooms. You can't really walk through those. And the aquatic center, just typically, I don't know if I've ever seen one in an aquatic center. They're just not usually the kind of space you want to walk in exactly because you've got to kind of be in your bathing suit to pull it off. So, so that's my answer is architecturally it works on the big spaces. If we can find or build a big one, then the walking track is pretty easy to shoehorn in. Lori?
Yeah, I was surprised how much the walking track came up in the community engagement side of it. So I kind of tasked Glenn to say, you know, how can we make this work? And his response just now is what he had told me. I don't know. I've also heard outside walking track. So that maybe if we can't get it into this facility, maybe we can look at the arena or maybe looking at an outside track at some point. But I think, as Glenn said, that if it's a smaller facility, it would be really hard to incorporate.
Good, thank you. Thank you, both of you. Other questions of the folks that are here presenting? Councillor Patton, we haven't seen your face, but I'm wondering if you have anything that you'd like to ask while we have the delegation here.
Well, thanks, Madam Mayor. No, I agree with my colleagues. I think that this is very ambitious, but I do think that especially the primary health care was more of a, I gave it thought, but I think the views that were put forward today shows that it is going to be a very integral part of what we do. And I think that it's going to take a lot of promotion to our community, especially at time of referendum, depending on the dollar value, whether it's co-located or it's not co-located, whatever the case may be. But no, it's been fantastic, and I think the design team is spot on in what they're looking at. So yeah, it's very exciting times, that's for sure.
Good, thank you, Councillor Patton. Anyone else? Okay, I think we, sorry, I just have to open my agenda again here. Okay, if there aren't any other questions, I'll ask someone to bring forward the motion to receive this report for information. Thank you, Councillor Van Elfen and Councillor Carlson. All in favor? Okay. And before, I guess you don't have to be around for this next piece. So great, thanks. Thank you so much for joining us. I guess Dr. Krabby had to leave, but Morelli and Glenn and Megan and Alex. It's been great to have all of you here with us answering our questions. And yeah, oh, Caleb, sorry, I forgot you because I didn't see your face anymore. We didn't hear from our Director of Finance, but I suspect that we will hear more from him when we're talking about fees and charges in a few minutes. So again, thank you for joining us today and bringing us all this information. We've got a lot to think about, but yeah, I appreciate you being here answering our questions.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Boot and councillors. And if any individual councillors, Mayor, if you have any questions with respect to the primary care component, I'm available anytime. Feel free to reach out. Thank you very much.
Can I just ask what our timeline is for the rest of the meeting?
Well, we have the Recreation Department fees and charges left. What are your thoughts, Lori? I guess it depends how much chatter we have and questions and things like that. But did you have some idea of the timeline for this next piece?
I was hoping 2 hours for the first part of the meeting and 2 hours for this part, but we can get through what we get through and see where we're at 5 o'clock.
Okay, how does that sound to you, Councillor Carlson?
Yeah, it's fine. I might have to leave a little at 4:30, but I will do my best to stay as long as I can.
Okay, Councillor Traynor? You also have little ones?
I'm good until 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Can we have
before,
a 2-minute break?
Yeah, I was just going to say before we get on with this, I need a little bit of a break. So I'll see you back at say 3:30, 5 minutes. Okay, thank you.